There are times when we meet a stranger on the street, only to realize a few hours later that they have been following us the whole way. Cold eyes, no words, just a strange presence. Enough to make a person feel uneasy for even a second. But that's not all. There are people who, with just a look, can send a chill down your spine, a feeling that you can't explain but can't deny. And there are normal nights that suddenly turn into nightmares, when darkness not only covers the room, but also shadows that you can't see but can feel. Today, I'm going to tell you 3 true stories about people who have faced the most terrifying things they could imagine from strangers they never expected. Those strangers will make you rethink seemingly harmless things, seemingly normal events, and whether you're really safe when you look around. This happened last year when I was on a solo road trip from Wisconsin to Montana. It was a long journey through forests and snow-covered mountains, and most of the time I was driving through the night with only my headlights lighting up the road ahead. Occasionally, I'd stop at deserted gas stations where only a few cars passed by, but I didn't pay much attention to that. I was focused on continuing the journey. This time, I had decided to travel alone to recapture a sense of freedom, to forget the daily troubles of life. One late night, I pulled into a desolate gas station in the middle of nowhere with no one else around. It was completely isolated, surrounded by dense trees. As I was pumping gas, another car slowly pulled in and stopped right next to me. A man got out. He was tall, wearing a flannel shirt, with long hair falling over his collar. But what was strange was that he didn't do anything. He just stood there, silently watching me. He didn't pump gas. He didn't say a word. His stare gave me chills. I turned back to continue pumping, but in the back of my mind, something felt off. The atmosphere grew tense. The wind howled through the trees, and I couldn't shake the feeling that he was waiting for something. After a few minutes, without saying anything, he turned and walked back to his car, then drove off into the darkness. The sound of his tires crunching on gravel slowly faded away, but I still felt his gaze lingering behind me. That feeling, I couldn't forget it. 3 hours later, I stopped at another gas station, about 50 miles away. As soon as I pulled in, I saw that same car parked there, completely still, with no one inside. I froze and stared at the vehicle. Everything around me went silent. No sounds, no people. It had started to rain lightly, and the dim light from the gas station wasn't strong enough to illuminate everything. I stood there, feeling like something was wrong. But the scariest part was that there was no sign the man had ever left. The car just sat there in the darkness, as if waiting for something. The rain fell. The clock ticked. I turned back to my car, a vague sense of dread rising inside me. I couldn't shake the strange feeling from earlier. As I sat down and got ready to continue, I happened to glance at the rearview mirror, and my heart nearly stopped. What I saw in that mirror is something I still can't explain. In that car, the one from earlier, someone was sitting in the back seat, staring straight at me. Their eyes were indescribable. A cold chill washed over me. I couldn't breathe. That man, when did he get in the back of my car? When had he come? What was he doing there? Panicked, I turned around, but there was no one there. The car was completely empty again. The chill in my body made my legs weak. Everything seemed to stop, like a nightmare come to life. I didn't think. I just knew I had to get out of that car. I threw open the door and ran into the woods, trying to find somewhere safe. Then I heard an engine revving behind me. I turned and saw the man's car speeding toward me, except this time, he was driving my car. He had stolen it. I frantically grabbed the phone I found in his car and called the police. When I reported the theft, I couldn't believe what they told me. That car had been reported stolen multiple times before, and the man, he was a known criminal who had done this to other people. Luckily, I survived, but others weren't so fortunate. This story has haunted me ever since. It was a night I will never forget, and the question still lingers in my mind. Was that man just a criminal, or was he something else? Something darker that had followed me on that long, lonely road trip? It was a winter night, no different from any other. Everything was quiet, with only the sound of cold wind whistling through the cracks in the door and snow falling gently outside. I was getting ready to go out and pick up a friend, calm as usual, until I opened the door. That was when I saw him, a man standing right on the porch, silent and not knocking. There was no sound, just his figure standing there, as if he were waiting for something. I looked at him for a moment, a strange feeling rising within me, but I tried to stay calm. He was wearing a thick coat, his face partially hidden by a cap, and his eyes seemed lost somewhere in the distance, unclear whether he was looking at me or staring into nothingness. At the time, I thought I was just overreacting to the cold. It wasn't the first time I'd encountered a stranger, but that silence, it felt different. Then he spoke, and his question startled me. "Is this the house of someone named David?" he asked. I shook my head, not knowing who this man was, and a growing sense of unease crept in. I told him I wasn't the person he was looking for. Without saying another word, he simply turned around and walked away. That was the moment I thought I had imagined it all. Just a random encounter, nothing to be afraid of. But as I went back to what I was doing, that strange feeling lingered. Later, when I stepped outside to meet my friend, I looked down at the ground and saw footprints in the snow leading from the main road straight to my front door. The tracks were fresh and clear, but they abruptly disappeared into the woods behind the house. I stood still, staring at them. A subtle wave of fear crawled up my spine. Why was he standing there? Why had he come all the way to my doorstep only to walk away? I tried to shake it off, telling myself I was overthinking. A few hours later, while I was on the phone with my friend, telling them about the strange encounter, I heard a sound coming from the back door. At first, I thought it was the wind hitting the window hard, but then there was a sudden noise. Someone was trying to break in. I heard the door handle twisting, then something falling to the ground outside. Each sound felt like a knife in my chest. I rushed to the back door, but couldn't make it in time to check. The door began to shake, and I lost control of myself. In a panic, I ran to my car to call the police, my heart pounding so hard it felt like it might explode. I don't even know how I managed to stay that calm. Right as I hung up with the police, I heard a loud bang from the back door again. But this time, it sounded like it had been forced open. When the police arrived, they checked the area and confirmed the door had been broken. But strangely, there were no signs of anyone. No tracks, no clues, nothing pointing to who had tried to break in. No cámaras, no clear evidence. Only the overwhelming fear that still lingered. Whoever that man was, he was still out there, and I had no idea what he wanted. Even after the police left, unable to find anything suspicious, I couldn't shake the uneasiness. I kept thinking, what if I hadn't opened the door earlier? What if I had just gone to bed, peacefully, without ever seeing him? Would I have woken up at all? The feeling that someone was out there, watching me from the darkness, kept me awake for nights. And the worst part was, there was no clear explanation. The footprints in the snow, the noises at the back door. All I had was this gnawing sense that someone had stood just outside, waiting for a chance. And I can't forget that moment. It was a night I'll never forget. And I still don't know what that man really wanted. I'm a student, and my part-time job is babysitting every Wednesday night. The family I regularly babysit for is peaceful and polite. They've always been friendly and welcoming each time I arrived. One night, just like any other, I arrived at their house late in the evening. The little boy I usually look after was already fast asleep, while his mother had something urgent to attend to. The house was quiet, nothing out of the ordinary, just me and the sleeping child. I figured I'd just sit, watch some TV, and wait for the parents to return. But a few minutes later, my phone rang. It was the boy's mother calling, and her voice sounded worried. She asked a very strange question. "Did you just call me?" I was a little surprised because I hadn't called her, but there was still a hint of concern in her voice. Although I knew I hadn't done anything wrong, an unsettling feeling began creeping in. Why would she ask something like that? It didn't feel right, but I tried to brush it off. I told myself I was just overthinking again. Still, I couldn't shake the uneasiness that had started to build. I stepped outside for some fresh air, hoping it would help calm me down. That's when I saw it. A beat-up old car parked right in front of the house. It was silver but dull, looked like it hadn't been used in a long time. No headlights on, and beside the car a man was standing, staring straight at the house window. Even though I couldn't make out his face clearly, the way he stood, completely still, sent a wave of tension through me. Then, suddenly, he got in his car and drove off. But only a few seconds later, the car stopped in the shadows and turned off its lights. Everything fell silent, and I had the terrifying feeling that he was waiting for something. It wasn't like anything I'd ever experienced before. The dread was real and growing fast. Just minutes later, in that heavy silence, I heard a small, clicking sound coming from the back door. It was faint but distinct, like someone trying to twist the doorknob. I turned sharply, heart racing, a cold shiver crawling up my spine. Then I saw it, a shadowy figure stepping through the back door. He was no longer outside. He was in the house. I couldn't think. I couldn't breathe. My heart was pounding out my chest. I scooped up the child in my arms, gently but quickly, and ran downstairs toward the front door. But as I reached the hallway, I heard heavy footsteps behind me. He was inside, and he was holding a knife. The sound of the metal dragging across the walls was like a death sentence. I flung the front door open and sprinted out into the snow, panic taking full control. I ran like I was being hunted, but all I could think was, if I hadn't grabbed that child, would either of us have made it out alive? Eventually, I made it outside and was able to call the police and the parents. I was lucky to escape, but the strangest part? The family never contacted me again. No calls, no messages, no check-ins, nothing. I never saw the child again. It was like the whole family had just vanished. Troubled by this, I started digging. What I found chilled me to the bone. The man I'd seen outside, the one who broke in, was the mother's ex-husband. He looked exactly like the intruder. That raised even more disturbing questions. Was this a family dispute? Was the child his target? I'll never know. There are only unanswered questions. But one thing is certain. I will never forget that night. I never took a babysitting job again after that. The truth about that man and that family still haunts me to this day. And I know I was lucky to survive.